Good evening. It's getting dark outside. I'm sitting on my back porch and I just closed my kitchen for the night. And I thought I would tell you what I did in there, and we're going to discuss chicken stock. So I made dinner earlier and it's getting close to bedtime. So we had chicken for dinner, and anytime I cut up raw chicken, I always save the scraps in a little Ziploc bag and throw them in my freezer till I get enough that I can make some chicken stock out of. So tonight I cleaned up the kitchen, threw the dishes in the dishwasher, because who wants to wake up to a nasty smelly kitchen with dirty dishes in the sink and ants trying to crawl on them and everything else. So went ahead and loaded the dishwasher, and then I thought, oh, I'm out of cold brew coffee. So I have a cool contraption I'm gonna have to show you guys sometime. It's a wire mesh filter basket that goes inside of a mason jar. You just put your coffee grounds into the filter basket, put it in the mason jar, fill it with cold water, screw the lid on, which is like a pour spout lid, and throw it in the refrigerator. In the morning you have cold brewed coffee. My daughter was confused. She thought cold brew coffee was just regular coffee that you put ice in. I'm like, no, that's hot brewed coffee, and then you're watering it down with melted ice, so not the same thing. And then she thought it was hot brew coffee that you just cool off in the refrigerator. Nope, still not cold brewed. Cold brewed coffee has a much smoother taste to it. I really like it better, but I like my coffee beverage usually hot for 75% of the year. So I have been known to cold brew the coffee and then warm it up in the morning before I drink it. So that's a little weird. Anyway, I was out of coffee, so I threw some of that into the refrigerator. And then I remembered that I'm running out of freezer space. I just added another additional bag of chicken cut up parts to my freezer, and then I need to make some stock, and that takes like 10-12 hours to make a really good stock. And I don't want to be having that in the kitchen simmering on the stove for 12 hours when it's July. It is hot outside. So I thought, well, I'll just put that on tonight, let it simmer overnight in my slow cooker. So I'm gonna work out how I did that, because you can't take frozen chicken, throw it in your slow cooker, and turn it on low overnight for 12 hours. That cooker is designed to cook really slow. So by the time you get that frozen chunks of chicken warmed up enough to start the cooking process in a slow cooker, it will have sat out in the danger zone of growing all sorts of bacteria all night before it gets to that temperature. So I didn't want to do that. If it was during the day and I could throw it on high or put some water in it or whatever, maybe, but it's better in a stock pot on the stove. I could have also put it in my Instapot and done it really quickly, but it would still take a couple of 3 hours to do that. The stock isn't as good because it's cooked at a really high temperature, and you want stock to go at a slow temperature to render out all that gelatinous goodness that's inside of the bones. So you'll see in the pictures I'll show you here in a minute that I put the frozen bones into my cast iron cooker on my stove, covered them with water, brought them up to boil. You don't want to boil it, just brought it up to boil. And then when those bones were up to boil, they weren't frozen anymore and the water was hot, and then I transferred all of that over to my slow cooker and put it on low, set the timer for 12 hours, and I will have stock that I can work with tomorrow morning. I can strain it and skim it and get it in the fridge, and I'll show you when it's done. But there is a difference. I get really fussy about this, and I don't know why. I really shouldn't. There's a difference between broth and stock, and the difference is bones. When you make broth, you simmer together meat and vegetables. When you make stock, you use bones, and it renders out this gelatinous, smooth mouthfeel, thick. When it cools, it should be jelly. It's fantastic to cook with, has a really rich flavor, all sorts of benefits. Somewhere around the mid-2000s, somebody started marketing bone broth, which is kind of an oxymoron because broth doesn't have bones. Stock has bones. But I don't think that they thought people would know what stock was, and it doesn't sound like something you want to drink. It's usually an ingredient. and they wanted to brand it as a health thing to drink, which that's great. So they labeled it bone broth. It's not a new term. Actually, the term's been around for a long time. It's just not technically, broth doesn't have bones in it. So I'm making stock. This has chicken legs in it. It's got chicken spines and it's got chicken skin, chicken fat. I did not season it at all. There's no seasoning in it because I don't know what I'm going to use it for yet. And so I want to season it when I use it so that it's seasoned appropriately for whatever the dish is that I'm going to use it for. But most of the time, if I am cooking with something that requires a cup of water and it's an easy swap, I will do it with a cup of stock because the flavor profile is just so much better. I'm not talking about muffins, cookies, we're not talking about that. But in soups or stews or chili or braising liquids or whatever I'm cooking with, I'll use stock if at all possible because it's just so much better. So I always have some that I've canned and put on my shelf in my pantry to be shelf stable. And I always have some in my refrigerator that I'm currently working on and using. I'll use broth out of a box. If I'm in a pinch, I'll even use bouillon cubes to make some broth, or I'll use a chicken base, which is like a really concentrated thick paste that turns into a good stock in a pinch, but it's just not the same as the gelatinous stock that you can make yourself. So, and I'm not one to waste things. So if I'm gonna cut up a chicken and there's gonna be leftover scraps, I am using the scraps for stock, and that's gonna make it great. Everything tastes better, even mashed potatoes. So anyway, please let me know if you have any questions about stocks or broths. I'll do my best to answer them the way that I do them, the way that I was taught, the way that I taught it to others. So it's always good to have on hand. Have a good night. Okay, to my cast iron pot, I added some leftover grilled chicken legs and all of the portions of chicken scrap that I had saved up in my freezer. Then I added enough water to cover everything, and I turned the pot on to high. While this was coming up to temperature, I went ahead and preheated my small crock pot to low. You can tell that it's starting to come to temperature because it's starting to melt and get a nasty scum on the top. And once it came to a boil, just to a boil, I killed the heat. And then I pulled that scum off the top. We don't need that. I threw it away. Then I transferred everything in the pot to the preheated crock pot, put the lid on, because that's going to stay on all night, left it turned to low. I don't need it on high. I do not want it to boil. Low is fine. And that will cook for 12 hours overnight while I'm asleep. Okay, good morning. The timer has gone off. This has cooked all night. I'm going to turn it off. Turn that off, because shush. Timer off. Stop talking to me. And here is what is left of the chicken. See how that's already kind of thick? You see all of that goodness that's come out of these bones. If I wanted to, I could keep this going until these bones absolutely fall apart and are just mush in the bottom. But they have rendered quite enough. I think I'm going to take the bits out and maybe treat the dogs with a little bit of this, and then I'm going to cool this off in the refrigerator, and then I'll pull the fat off, which I'll use for something else. I'll tell you about that, and then I'll let this cool down. We'll see how it goes. So here's the setup. I have pulled the interior ceramic pot out of the slow cooker, and right next to it I have put a large metal bowl. It's my largest bowl, and a strainer in the top. I have a ladle, and I'm just going to strain all of this through here to get the large bits out and straight into the bottom of the bowl. Use metal. Metal lets the heat escape while this is going to be in the refrigerator, where plastic would insulate and hold the heat inside and it would not cool fast enough. Okay, I have strained it all out. This has fallen into tiny little bits and pieces. You can see that the meat just comes straight off the bones. The bones are now soft. This is completely cooked down. I could cook it down further and further and further, which if I had time today or if I had more of this and I was making a huge batch, I would. But this is a small batch and I have other things I want to get to today. So this is as good as it's going to be. And I'm happy with it. And you know what? The dogs are going to be really pleased with all these scraps because they're going to get that in their food later. But this is just chicken and water. There is no spices, there is no herbs, there is no vegetables. You can add those things, but if you're watching a video and they're all, I put in fresh parsley and I put in white peppercorns and I put in, that's great, and you can do that, but you do not have to do that. This is going to be seasoned and used in recipes, and I'll do those things at that time. So if all you have is chicken and water, make this. You can use it for everything and it is well worth it. We ended up with, let's see, I have markings on the inside of my bowl. I don't know if you can see them. I can barely see them. Looks like exactly 8 cups of stock. I'm going to put this in the fridge. This fat on the top is going to congeal. I can pull that off and have chicken schmaltz, which is chicken fat that you can use to cook with, like you do chicken, like you do bacon grease. You can use chicken. It's excellent to cook with. And then the rest of this will cool and it will gel, and I will have meat jello, which is stock. It's exactly what you want it to do. I saw someone post one time, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? This has turned into jelly. Girl, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. That is what you want to happen. So I will show some pictures after this cools down. We'll see what it looks like. Okay, this has been in the refrigerator all day. Look at this jello consistency. This is exactly what I want. I need to can it, so I need to bring this up to a boil and get it into some hot jars and a hot canner, because there's no meat in here, there's no bones in here, it's just the liquidy broth. It only needs to pressure can for 25 minutes. Okay, here's the setup. I've got my canning supplies out. I have put my stock on to get it up to a boil. I have put my clean jars into hot water inside my canner itself, and I'm going to bring that up to a simmer. And once this gets going, I'm going to kill the heat, and then I'm going to pull my jars and start to fill them. You do not want cold meat juice sitting in a canner coming up to temperature. You want to start everything hot. And we're going to fill the jars up to the bottom of the neck, which is 1 inch of headspace. Wipe with vinegar the rim so there's a nice clean area for the lid to seal to. Apply the flat, and then apply the ring only fingertip tight. If it is too tight, your lids will buckle in a pressure canner. It needs to breathe. The water's simmering. We're going to put our hot jars into that hot water, and then we're going to lock on the lid. The lid needs to lock and start to steam up in there. We're going to watch this little chimney spout for steam before we put our weight on. Mine is a 10-pound weight. Once it starts steaming, we time it for 10 minutes, and when it's run for a full 10 minutes with steam coming out of the chimney, that's when we place the weight. Once the weight is on and it starts making a noise, we'll time it for 25 minutes. That's all there is to it. My canner is running right now. I'm gonna wait for the 25 minutes. When it's done, I'm gonna kill the heat, take it off the burner, and then I'm going to let it cool down all by itself. If you pop that lid off as soon as the pressure is released and you have that really high temperature change between the very hot pressure canner and the cool air-conditioned room that it's sitting in, you could break some of your jars. I don't want to do that high pressure change and temperature change that fast, so I'm just going to let it cool off, let it come down to pressure all by itself. There's a little stopper on there that will go down when the pressure is all released, and even then I will crack the lid and let it slowly breathe and come down. Before I go to bed tonight, I'll take the jars out, set them aside, and then I'm not going to touch them so that the seals can stick until tomorrow evening. They'll just sit on my counter until it's done. Thanks for going on this stock journey with me. I hope you learned something. Let me know if you have any questions.